Hello, and welcome to this episode of Not a Lady, a Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman podcast. My name is Sarah.
And I'm Kelly.
And this is our Season 1 Roundup episode. Today we are discussing all things related to the first 17 episodes of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman.
Woo woo!
We have made it, we are here, and I'm super excited to talk about all the expected things we're going to talk about today, but I'm also super excited for all the unexpected stuff that's going to come up.
This is the first time that we're not just like sitting here talking about a specific episode, so it's kind of fun.
Super fun. But I do keep like looking for my notes to be like, I feel unprepared, but I am prepared to talk about everything. And we have some fun things planned for along the way. And we should already say thank you so much to everyone who wrote in. We had many prompts that we had all sorts of people write in and give answers to.
A lot of people. Yeah, it was kind of fun reading some people's comments actually, because it reminded me about stuff that I forgot happened. Like
exactly
when we started this in September of last year.
Well, let's jump off with our portraits, episode 17 of season 1, our final lessons game.
First one I got for you here is from Catherine Cutting on Instagram, who says, I think Michaela learns that even though Sully shows affection towards her, he still has a lot of grief and heartbreak. Michaela realizes that Sully is afraid to love, fearing that he will once again lose someone that is very close to his heart. I think Sully learns that even though he isn't ready to be in a relationship, he still needs to address his affections for Michaela, so as to say that one day he will be ready and he still needs time to grieve and heal.
True. Lots of feelings in portraits.
Yeah, how does that make you feel?
How does it make me feel? It makes me feel like I have a lot of feelings.
I said before when we recorded that episode, I think it was good that they had that conversation. I think this comment is, it's kind of like assuming a lot of, what Sully probably is feeling, where this whole I'm not ready is stemming from, because he never actually says, he just says he's not ready. But yeah, I think what this person is saying is could definitely be real reasons that he's holding back.
As viewers, we don't have like a canon reason about like we're too different and I'm not ready or what that means. So I think we sort of have to put our own, like you said, like assumptions or guesses onto what the roots, like we've definitely seen things that, in other episodes that obviously are influencing both Dr. Mike and Sully as far as like their relationship goes. But there's very little of a character actually saying like, I lost my wife and it makes me sad to think about getting married again, or something along those lines, which is okay. Like it would probably be too cheesy if they did do it that way, but there has to be like audience interpretation. And I think another commenter on Instagram, TV Junk 13, said very similar, where they kind of put their own interpretation on it. Their lesson was, I think in this episode, Sully learns that he wasn't being sensitive towards Mike's feelings. And he was just so busy feeling confused about his own feelings towards her and, of course, towards Abigail, which, again, he never in this episode explicitly says that he's thinking about Abigail, but we as the viewers are, that's one of the concrete things we know is he lost his wife in a very tragic way. So obviously it's going to influence how he approaches his next relationship.
Right. Julie emailed us, and I like her lesson, which is, I learned that you don't need a villain or antagonist to tell a good story. Portraits doesn't have a defined bad guy in it. It's all character driven, and yet it's very enjoyable, which I like that.
Yeah. And connecting to community oriented, Totally Nicole on Instagram said, in the finale, you can tell that the town has had an enormous impact on Mike, and Mike has had a large impact on the town. All the characters are important to each other and intertwined somehow. I think the minor and secondary characters also hold up the idea or lesson that it really does take a village to raise children, since they're always willing to help when the Cooper kids are in need. Which I want to agree with, but I also remember that somebody punched Matthew in the face in this episode. or he punched someone. I don't know. There was punching involved.
Yeah. Grateful fan emailed us, and one lesson that she learned pertained to the Jimmy Crack Corn song that we talked about a little bit.
That I basically went off on.
Which, nope, I think it says a lot about how many things we listen to that we don't know the meaning of. But that's what she was saying, so that was a lesson learned on my part. Know the lyrics before you start jamming out. She also mentioned that she thinks Dr. Mike learned that for some, living life to the fullest may not be in the same way that she would live life to the fullest. I did think it was weird that he was going to go to the doctor after he couldn't do photography anymore so that he could live longer without being able to continue his dreams. A little backwards at that point, but maybe he learned his own lesson in some way. Which, reading this is interesting because I didn't even really think about, I didn't think about that too much, but it is a good point that even if he couldn't continue his passion, he did want to know how he could prolong his life.
It felt like in the episode that was his symbolic way of like showing he had given up.
Right.
Which is, it's weird because we want him to choose life in a way, but we don't want him to give up his dreams either. And it felt like, the episode set those up to be in conflict. But I think a Grateful fan makes a good point that was his journey, right? It doesn't have to be our journey.
Yeah.
But for him, like, he was balancing, like, I'd rather live a short life, but live it to the fullest, versus, like, oh, if I can't live it to the fullest, then I'll just live a long life. It is a little weird.
Backwards, yeah. Yeah.
One comment we had from a Grateful fan, it's not really related to lessons, but they were like, aren't you glad that in the final episode of the season, Sully went back to his roots of showing up randomly when no one expects him to be there, so that we could go, where did he come from? And then we also had someone write in and comment on we had a discussion about the comment made that Sully and Dr. Mike are too different. The write-in was, it's true that Sully and Mike are alike in many ways, passionate, stubborn, caring, independent, etc. But looking at the era, they're from different classes. Boston high society versus low class, quote unquote, roughing it. She's been to college, he's been immersed with the Cheyenne. She sleeps in a bed, he sleeps on the ground. She has a family, he doesn't. So there's plenty of differences to fret over, which I think is a fair analysis.
It's not a reason why you can't be in a relationship, though.
No, it's not, but they're definitely like, okay, that is some more defined. I think we were having trouble, like, creating lines of like, here's where they're different, so I feel like these are valuable. But my only other comment would be the class system, because the class system, obviously, I feel like if the characters were in a big city,
right,
we would feel probably that class difference, but I don't feel like we see that in the town at all.
But they're both like rural, making it work.
Sure, their lifestyles are different, but as far as like actually having a class system, I don't feel like Colorado Springs has presented us one. All the divisions in Colorado Springs are pretty much racial.
Yeah.
Those are the most defined lines.
Not to mention that Sully probably would say he's different than like everyone. I mean, his living situation is different than everybody else, so
that's a good point.
They are different.
There's not a single person in that town that Sully would walk up to and be like, I'm glad you're
we can relate. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thanks for writing in those, guys. We have one more here from Liz Marie, who says she learned that there actually were, English teacher, inconsistencies in Dr. Mike's comments about the Indians. However, different writers every episode. We as fans notice those tiny changes, but a person working 12-hour days on the show didn't realize it, which is true. And I think we've said that numerous times when there's been some inconsistencies of like, well, that stuff's hard to keep track of, even with the show Bible. But yeah, it was a little more noticeable in this episode.
And it's a shame the context. I recall back to Heroes when we had the inconsistency about how old Colleen is versus how old Abigail was. Remember we had a discussion about that? Like, that's an inconsistency that's like, okay, that makes sense. That you would kind of, like, that could get lost. But, like, having your heroine, who has been definitely a advocate and, you know, as in terminology of today, an ally of the Cheyenne, to make comments like that, it's really shocking.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's our final lessons of the season. So, just a little fun thing. We have been keeping track of the most fan posts / contributors on our social media and via email. And so we would like to give
shout out, woot woot. This is your special shout out.
to a grateful fan. And actually, we had a second person write in via email and sign their message a grateful fan. So we're going to start calling that person a grateful fan too. But our initial
the OG grateful fan.
The OG
yes.
grateful fan has been emailing us almost every episode and always has great things to say.
Seriously, great input. Yeah.
And we had a runner-up, Julie, who has lots of tidbits about Dr. Quinn and loves to share it. So thank you both.
Yep, thanks guys. On Instagram, we were most contacted via comments, DMs, whatever, by Petulis. So I'm sure you guys have heard us mention her name a number of times, but she had the most responses to us. And the runner-up would be Totally Nicole, who we also already mentioned today. You guys are rock stars. And actually, yeah, it's been really fun getting to read your comments. And even you guys just like checking up on us and stuff is really nice. So thank you.
Moving on into...
You know what I was thinking? What's kind of fun is like they're listening to the podcast right now, but like they don't know what's going to come next. Like usually, you know, sure, they don't know exactly what scene will come next, but if you've watched it, you know, like we're going to talk about it. We're going to make dumb jokes. And anyway, I'm just like picturing somebody like listening on their way to work right now and they're like, I wonder what's going to happen next. That's lame, but I don't know why. That's why it's kind of fun for me.
It is super fun. Our next section, which is going to be probably the longest section of this episode, are our superlatives. And as you guys know, if you follow us on any of our social media, we were sending out prompts over the course of the past week to when we're recording, and got a lot of good write-ins and have a lot of ideas for things to talk about ourselves. So we're just gonna...
Wait, I want to know, did you ever get voted as a superlative like in middle school or high school or something?
No.
If you did, what do you think you would have got voted?
Well, I know which one I wanted to.
Which was what?
There was most likely to become an author.
Oh.
And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be voted that one.
I got runner-up for class clown when I was in middle school. Yeah.
Really? Okay, all our jokes make sense now.
No, I don't even think of myself now that way, but yeah, it was weird in middle school. What else? I don't know what else to say.
Okay, Kelly, no one believes that. I can ask our family who's the family clown. We would all vote for you. Maybe who's the family weirdo?
Yeah,
Kelly.
Literally.
And then Nick would be like not far behind you. And you and Nick together is like the ultimate chaos.
What's really funny about that is I'm actually visiting my family right now. And yeah, our youngest brother's home from college. And my mom was on the phone with our dad. And me and Nick were just like messing around. And then my dad said something like, oh, like, what are you guys doing right now? And Mom's like, well, Kelly and Nick are together, so you know how that is. And it was really funny. He was laughing.
All right. Our first superlative is actually being broken down into 3 parts. So I thought we could talk about these 3 different things separately, but it is one superlative. A season 1 scene that makes you angriest, happiest, and saddest. Let's start with angriest because why not?
So I was trying to think, like, when was I the most actually upset at the show? Probably when they're at Grace's cafe and Hank's, like, basically attacking Grace.
Same. Because I did the same. I was like, which scene, like, literally made me feel so much anger that if I could have gone through the screen and punched someone, I would have.
Right.
Yeah. I think you said the cafe. I also really hate the scene in the mercantile. And it's not just because, like, he is really horrible, but then Robert E. does beat him up at the cafe, whereas in the mercantile, everyone just stands there and is like, oh, let it go, that's enough, right. You too, right? Like, they blame both of them, and that made me really angry.
Mad at them, too.
Yeah, basically, Hank being the worst to Grace, the most lovely woman.
Okay, well...
Maybe in this show? Like, let's be honest. We've been mad at Dr. Mike sometimes, too. I don't think I've ever been mad at Grace.
I mean, yeah, no. What about the opposite then? What's been the moment that made you the happiest?
I had to pick, like, I think any time, like, they were having a family dinner at the homestead and they were all, like, laughing, which sometimes was, like, they were laughing at Dr. Mike's, like, bad cooking or like, just them being a family. Like, when I think about moments that make me happy in the show, like, I think even about the, you know, they always, in the credits, they have the very final shot is the kids and Dr. Mike all laughing on the wagon. I was like, oh, it's kind of like that, but maybe not that moment, but like the moments like where they're together as a family and they're having fun. But if I had to pick like more specific, I was like, I think finishing the school, like the town working together to finish the school, was pretty happy.
Which is related to the episode that I thought of. I thought of that episode, the operation, when Dr. Mike finds Brian on the bridge after she's finished his surgery and he's okay and remembers who she is and everything. That's probably my happiest. I also enjoy when they're all together as a family. I do like the scene. Do you remember after, what episode is, Running Ghost, where Dr. Mike is basically like, if you kill him, talking about Tate Rankin, if you kill him, like, I never will speak to you again. And then she finds him and he basically like collapses. And I just like that. It made me happy because I was like, he is who she thought she was. And anyway, I like that scene. It made me happy. That was the question. Stop laughing.
No, I think a lot of people like that scene, but when I watch that scene, all I think about is her going, did you kill him? And he goes, no. And then I want him to go, but he is dead.
But the buffalo did.
Eventually she's gonna find out that Tate Rankin was killed.
Yeah.
And then it's gonna be like, but I thought you didn't kill him. I didn't. Magic white buffalo, yo.
Saddest moment?
I picked Dr. Mike crying over her dishes in Happy Birthday. Because I think it wasn't just about the dishes, right? Like, in that scene, it was like her mother's letter and feeling rejected by her mom, feeling lonely, which I think, let's talk about, I'm living through my third round of, in quarantine pandemic because the country I moved to got hit by COVID actually for the first time, like 3-4 weeks after I got here. And I moved to a new country and now I'm alone in my house. And I don't know, so I think that right now feels very relatable, like just being lonely. And also just her visions and dreams that she had for herself and what she thought she would be doing. Like, I don't know, I just feel like it's sad because she's crying over the dishes, but it's more like the dishes were something that gave her permission to finally let out tears about a lot of other stuff.
Right. No, I agree. I think for me, the saddest moment was when Jake goes back to his shop, locks himself in there after Lauren's already gone in there and dumped out all the alcohol, and he's drinking that whatever antiseptic thing that he has, and everybody's just like locked out of his shop watching him just like destroy himself,
kill himself
after they like already did so. They basically saved his life. Like, they did so much for him. That made me, that's sad. I don't like that scene.
For our write-ins, Swan Batai on Instagram wrote in that episode 2, The Epidemic, covered all these bases for them. Made angriest, happiest, and saddest, with Dr. Mike getting influenza and all that stuff.
Lisa Farber King said her happiest moment was when Sully kissed Michaela, which we had a lot of people say that. Catherine Cutting said that. Liz Marie said that. I think people, it was small and quick, but I think it was kind of building up, so that made a lot of people happy.
Warriors Faith 15 on Instagram said any acknowledgement of Dr. Mike and Sully's chemistry in like the whole of the show made them happiest.
Rebecca on Facebook also said what I said. I love when Dr. Mike realized Brian could see in the operation.
Angriest. Catherine Cutting said the angriest moment to me was Michaela in Rite of Passage. Her reaction to Matthew only pushed him further away. We all can determine she did not handle that situation well.
Correct. We also had some other people like Petula say when Mike pretended that Sully stopped grieving. Warriors Faith 15 said Dr. Mike's birthday with Hank and the Reverend's dates lunches. Really? Question mark.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think those were kind of funny, but fair enough if that made you angry.
Yeah.
Totally, Nicole said, I can't pick one moment that made me most angry, but it has to be anything Ethan Cooper says or does in Father's Day.
Agreed. I'm also laughing because Smisha Nisha said the angriest was when Michaela and Sully said they weren't ready for a relationship, which is what we just talked about, which, I mean, I think we know that's...
Can't force it, Shmisha.
I think we know that's a big motivator for people watching this show. We had some people write in about saddest. Petula said she felt saddest when Ethan Cooper was being a jerk. So, yeah, I mean, he either is making people feel angry or sad, so.
I Not a Lady podcast censored that.
Oh.
Well. Petulas did not use the word jerk, but as we have established on our show, that is the worst thing that the Not a Lady podcast sisters are probably going to say about you. Either you're a jerk or you're a butt.
Sarah says that, not me. I'm more likely to give you a bad nickname. Saddest moment for Catherine Cutting was when Charlotte died. We didn't talk about that, but that was sad.
And Grateful Fan said the saddest moment was when we, the audience, could see Robert E.'s scars and later hear him talking about his past as a slave, which also agreed.
Yeah, definitely. Next superlative to talk about was Sarah. What was your most surprising moment or event that happened in season 1?
So I had 2 for different reasons, because surprising could mean like shocking surprising, but it also could be thrilling surprising, right? Like there's a connotation, denotation, you know, this is my English teacher coming out, right? So for me, I think one of the most surprising moments in season 1, which I said this when we watched the episode, but in The Prisoner, where Dr. Mike gets called out by Custer as being a traitor / co-conspirator in the escaping of cloud dancing, mostly because, and I think I said this at the time, but I really have come to expect men to underestimate Dr. Mike because she's a woman. And the fact that Custer doesn't, and he's like, I can't prove it, but I know you were involved. That was surprising to me. Like, whoa, in a good storytelling way.
Yeah.
And then my other surprising, which is like the negative surprising, was when Dr. Mike tried to cover for Matthew in Law of the Land, when she found out about the cow being killed, and she's like, let me handle it. Olive, I'll just pay you for the cow. And I was like, wait, what?
I thought about that one. I don't want to pick the same one as you, but I did think that was pretty surprising. I was thinking more like, basically anything that surprised me was when Hank was trying to be a decent human being. So like when Hank went to visit Jake after Jake had his whole alcohol poisoning, or when Hank and Dr. Mike went on a date, that was surprising to me, because if I was like, Dr. Mike, you like, no, this is not a match, so like, why is this even a thing that's happening? We had a lot of responses on this one as well. Liz Marie telling us that it was most surprising when Mike and Sully kissed because she never expected it to be so spontaneous.
A Grateful Fan said the most surprising moment for them was when she let Jake take out her tooth in the pilot. I don't care what or to who I'm trying to prove to, no thank you.
But honestly, I think that was surprising because it's like very soon on in the season, so you don't really know Dr. Mike that well. Yeah. Catherine Cutting said the most surprising moment for me was when Michaela let Ethan Cooper go, which is true. Audra on Facebook says, I think the run and go scene at the end where the buffalo kills the man then disappeared. A little far-fetched and weird for me.
So another kind of surprising,
unexpected moment.
Our next superlative is your favorite season 1 set or location. What do you got, Kelly?
Well, I think just like anytime they're like outdoors in nature is really pretty and I enjoy. I think I obviously enjoy the clinic after it becomes the clinic, but I was thinking like the time that we get to see the most scenery is probably in Badwater when Dr. Mike and Sully are like hiking up cliffs, coming down the mountain, like getting to do all that. I really enjoyed that episode because it was like, I mean, they weren't in town the whole time. They were outside doing, I don't know, outdoor activities.
On their quest. Yeah. I definitely sort of agreed, because when you have this show that's like about the Wild West, part of you is like, you can't just pick a building because there's so many beautiful landscapes.
Right.
So I also thought the location of Matthew's vision quest, especially when they do some of those, like, I'm assuming they had a crane or something, you know, where they're like above him and you know, there's the trees and the mountains. Like, it's really beautiful location. However, if you were to ask me, like, where, like, if you could go to one of the sets and just explore it, I would actually pick Bray's Mercantile, because I think there would be so many little details in the Mercantile that I would just love to, like, explore and touch things.
Right.
And I would basically get on all of Lauren's nerves because I would just want to look and touch everything. A grateful fan wrote an email and actually agreed with you that the rocks in bad water, especially in the scene where they're drying their clothes after being in the river, that was also their favorite location.
Audra said the school once it's built, which is a great one. Didn't think of that.
And Catherine Cutting said, my favorite set or location was where they filmed Sully and Michaela searching for Brian in the pilot. So we got a lot of nature lovers here.
I love it.
You came to the right place.
Our next superlative is best season 1 costume, which I know you're probably dying to talk about.
You know what I realized? In the future, I want to do more research about period costumes and, like, the correct things. The thing is, I know a lot about Edwardian era costuming and medieval, but I don't know much about the West. But I do notice costumes, that is true, especially, like, silhouettes. So I really want to learn more. So I had kind of 2 picks. I liked Dr. Mike's hurdy-gurdy dress, which is that, like, pale blue, and then her Founder's Day dress, which is the purple one. And it's probably not even just because, I mean, they are 2 of, like, the prettiest dresses that she wears, for sure. Jane Seymour looks stunning. But also because it's cool to see her dressed up, like, for an occasion.
Yeah.
Right? It's not her regular... Like, if she wore dresses like that all the time, those dresses would probably stand out less. But since she's kind of moved into her more country doctor clothing, which I also love, that those, you know, nicer, like, party dresses stand out more.
Right.
But I also have to say, costume, I also want to include a shout out for, like, hair. I love her hair on Christmas Eve in the pilot.
I remember when we talked about that.
She has really pretty hair as it is, but if I could do that with my hair, and my hair was that long, I would do it.
Hey, well, like, you could be bald for all they know. The listeners.
Thank you for that image now that they all have.
Yes, she's actually bald. My favorites are the, like, country Dr. Quinn. Anytime she's wearing, I, like, hate that I don't have a better name for this, but that long, like, Carhartt looking jacket. I love
her
that.
trench coat.
But it's not. It's like a...
It's not.
It's like a rancher. I don't know. I like it. Also...
Do you remember I had a theory about that jacket, that I'm pretty sure that was Charlotte's jacket.
You did say that. Or somebody brought that to our attention, or that was your original idea.
I think it was mine. I'm taking credit for it.
I also enjoy any combination when she'll have, like, a collared shirt and, like, a vest, and then her skirt. Like, she'll have these puff sleeve with a vest. I just like her vests, all of them.
Why did vests go out of fashion for women?
I don't know. I still wear vests. Well, they're not really vests, to be honest.
But not like hers.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking, like, her vest.
I will say we have to give a shout out to Sully's poncho, his red poncho, because I love that thing.
And Catherine Cunning would agree with you. The red and black poncho that Sully wore. And the thing is, again, this is a costume piece that I would have told you that maybe only shows up in the pilot, but actually it does show up a couple other times, and that's what makes it stand out more when he does bring it out, because you're like, oh yeah, he wore it a lot in the pilot, and then it's only showed up, like, here and there in a few other episodes. But
totally Nicole, if we haven't figured out already, has a deep hatred for Ethan Cooper, but even so, very much enjoyed Mike's blue dress from Father's Day, which you brought up.
Her point was, which is why I still watch that episode despite hating Ethan Cooper, because she likes her dress.
Yeah. Hey, totally fair. Next on the list, hope you guys are still tuning in. This one is favorite secondary or minor character in season 1. I don't know the difference.
In my mind, secondary is a reoccurring character. Minor would be the kind of characters who, you know, only show up in a couple episodes.
Right.
I wrote Grace, Cloud Dancing, and Wolf, but all of a sudden it just came to my mind that why don't we give Horace enough appreciation? We talked a lot in this season about how Horace always surprised us. And I feel like I should say Horace because it's unfair. But
That's
Cloud
true.
Dancing,
Yes, Cloud Dancing
Grace,
is who I was
Wolf,
thinking of.
I love them all, but maybe I should throw some praise Horace's way.
I also thought Cloud Dancing, but also Lauren. I love Lauren. Like, I just...
Do you love Lauren or do you love Orson Bean?
Both. Both. Because, yeah, I don't know what it is, but I really like grumpy old men who internally have a soft spot. I just do.
You like your Ebenezer Scrooges, eh?
Yeah. Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman on Instagram, sorry, that's their username, Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, says, I think the secondary characters in season 1 are particularly well written. They always add something to the story, whether it's reflections, tensions, character evolutions. They are always very useful, and they bring the series a much more realistic aspect of the America of the 19th century. They further lend credibility to all aspects of the series. They are, in a way, personality stereotypes of this historical period, allowing spectators to be immersed in the world of the 19th century. This sounds like you. Did you write this?
I did not. What I was about to say is, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Literally sounds like you wrote that.
Mommy of Amelia said, I like Emily.
Which is interesting, because I feel like I don't really know anything about Emily.
Other than...
Her husband died, Dr. Mike gave her a C-section, and she's in the quilting circle. And she got married and moved away.
Well, but I think she's the one who, like, she's one of the first people to really befriend Dr. Mike after Charlotte dies.
That's because Dr. Mike, like, slices her open, and she sees that it worked.
Okay, it's not because she slices her open, just because she saves her baby's life. Come on, medical student.
Totally Nicole says, almost all the secondary characters have a backstory, and we get an insight into who they are as people rather than just being bland. They bring conflict to the story, and every good story needs conflict. It's true. They all do kind of have their own storytelling. I'd be interested to know who your favorite character is, Totally Nicole. Your favorite secondary character, though. Probably not Ethan Cooper.
Rebecca said, my favorite secondary characters are Grace and Robert E. I love their interactions in The Visitor.
We love Grace and Robert E. Agreed.
Our next superlative is the most hated season 1 villain/antagonist.
Stankin' Rankin.
Stankin' Rankin. I wrote Tate. Actually, the worst.
Yes.
Let's take into consideration that we, like, actually see him murder someone on screen. I'm pretty sure he's the only villain that we see. Obviously, Custer doing his own thing off screen.
Yeah.
But,
you know, you try to mess with Sully. No, not good for me. That's why.
I didn't even think about that.
You forgot that he almost kills Sully?
Yes, I did.
You just were worried about the buffalo. Well,
all I can think is he literally is just shooting buffalo for no reason.
Which, hey,
priorities.
I'm not saying that's good either, but it is interesting that I think about Sully and you think about the animals. And honestly, guys, that is how we are in real life. Wait, no, that sounds bad. That sounds like I only care about, like, attractive men or something. Like, that's not true. That's not true at all.
Or, like, Kelly cares about people. And
Yeah, let's go with that.
It's a little more effort for me.
Yeah, we both said Tate Rankin. And then I obviously put Custer on there because Custer's freaking annoying and I don't like him. And I mean, that goes for historical, obviously, reasons as well. Like, that's a real character, that there's a background.
I didn't put Custer just because within the context of season 1, Custer, season 1 and what I know, like, Custer is going to go on to do, he's going to get a whole lot worse. Let's put it that way, right? Without giving spoilers. But I was like, if I pick Custer here, then he's got nowhere to go to become the most hated guy. He can't already be, because I know he's going to hit that point.
One of the most hated.
Obviously, I don't like Custer, but
Yeah.
I feel like for season 1, he's not one of our worst. I also, don't at me, but I also kind of put Olive as not necessarily a villain, but definitely as a foil and an antagonist of our heroine. And I think part of that is, of course, because I feel like Olive is a little bit undermotivated as a character and inconsistent, but also just because The number of times we talked about
Yeah.
something Olive said or did, and we just like wanted to roll our eyes and be like, are you kidding me? Like, why are you like this? There's no good reason for you to be like this.
Yeah.
So I kind of threw Olive in there as someone that I was just like, girl, I'm over you. Move on.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say that Catherine Cutting agreed with us because she said with me, she said General Custer, and Audra said the guy in Running Ghost who beats up Stully, again, also known as Stankin' Rankin.
Liz Marie and Grateful Fan both sent an email saying that they hated Ethan Cooper, the children deserved better, and while he's not technically a villain, it's one thing for someone to steal money or horses or whatnot, but the way a father can affect the rest of his child's life is astronomical, and what he does to his kids, and not just his kids, like, of course we can't think about Ethan Cooper without thinking about Charlotte and like how he treated her.
Well put. Next up, I feel like a radio announcer or something. Like, and our next winner, and our next superlative is the funniest season 1 moment scene. This was hard for me because I'm like, there were so many times that I was like, that, like, I would write in my notes like, ha, or like dying laughing, or like we would talk about it. What made you bust up laughing then?
I think at the top of the list has to go the skunk attack in Badwater.
Skunk attack!
The skunks are just bullies. Okay, Hank, right? Like, yeah. And then them like washing their clothes in the water,
that is
and
funny.
Just like all of the skunk
That honestly
things.
is really funny, and I love that when William Shockley is like actually laughing. Or I just love that.
Yeah, same. So I mean, that one is at the top of my list. Like, if someone were to ask me like, show me a really funny scene in the show, I would be like, okay, let's watch the skunk part. As far as like also just like within the context of what Dr. Quinn is about, I wrote like Lauren's surgery in the healing, but it's not
funny to you. That's funny to you,
no,
Sarah,
it's
really.
It's not the actual surgery, but it's Horace narrating the surgery to the crowd outside.
Yeah.
Scooping his guts out.
Yeah, that is really funny. What I thought of is I really like the episode, The Visitor, when Dr. Mike's mom comes. And there's a couple things that happen there, like just like things that Brian says or whatever. But I really do like the scene where Sully's outside and Elizabeth is like, there's savage out there. And then Dr. Mike's like, savages don't knock, mother. Which is really funny because now I'm actually reading that somebody else emailed us about that. I didn't see that until
Grateful
now.
Fan 2.0.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, also said one of my favorite / funny lines from season 1 is when Dr. Mike says, savages don't knock, mother.
Yeah.
And Grateful Fan 2.0 also added, I love all the scenes with Sully and Brian, but one funny scene is when Brian is asking Sully about his first name, which I had kind of forgotten about that, but he's like, it's not a fit name for a deer or a man, much less a deer.
My favorite is when they're like, we won't laugh, and then he's like, Byron, and they're like, Byron? OG Grateful Fan says, in the pilot, when Dr. Quinn is trying to get on the horse and looking at Robert E's face, because there's no attempt to help her at all either, but just confused or amused or who knows what at her attempt to try to mount this horse. Or her cooking in the pilot and the flour going everywhere. I mean, you're a doctor and scientist. You know how to measure and be precise with stuff. Why can't you bake some biscuits without ingredients flying into the air?
Yeah.
Which mostly I just laughed because I remember you being like, yeah, that's me.
It is. Except I said, I think I would do a better job of keeping the ingredients in the bowl.
Yeah, but.
Liz Marie also kind of echoed that and said Dr. Mike, quote unquote, cooking, but also in portraits when Brian says he swims naked.
Catherine Cutting says, the funniest scene in Bad Water when Sully, Michaela, and Matthew met up with Horace and the others. And that was kind of similar to what you were describing earlier. And Audra agreed.
Yeah.
I laugh every single time. Can we say the musical score for those parts is on point?
Shout out to the composers.
Oh, man. I honestly just want to rewatch that. Talking about it makes me want to rewatch it.
Accurate, yeah. Our next superlative is season 1 game-changing moments. Again, game-changing could have a number of different interpretations.
True.
What you got?
So I said a couple things. Immediately, I do think about Dr. Mike hiding Black Kettle. What episode was that?
The pilot, silly. That's
wow.
like one of her first surgeries.
So that's my point, is it's very early in the season, and I think it's game-changing because it really gives us an idea of who Dr. Mike is, what she's about. Yeah. She's willing to help and do anything, and that was risky. I mean, hiding, like, that's risky.
Yeah.
I also think about her idea to use the boarding house as a makeshift clinic during the influenza epidemic. That was pretty instrumental because not only does it lead way to her actually using the clinic full-time, but I think it did a lot of favors for a lot of people. And I think also when everybody kind of chips in to help with the schoolhouse, I think that's pretty monumental because it says a lot about their community and the lengths they're willing to go to support one another.
Between the clinic, setting up the clinic, and like even everyone who ends up helping in the clinic, and then also like similar to everyone getting involved in building the schoolhouse, I think those are both game-changing moments. I echoed both of those. I also kind of felt like when the town was concerned about Dr. Mike getting shot in Badwater, we kind of just talked about it, but when they find the guy shot and with the note that's like trespassers will be shot or whatever, and like everyone's like, we gotta do something, we can't let her go in there alone, you know. They rally together and the group of guys that end up going. And then of course, I think Dr. Mike and Sully, I guess, going behind Custer's back to save Cloud Dancing.
True.
Especially when through most of the episode, you know, she's trying to gain support from the town, gain support from the Reverend, and in the end, they're just like, you know what, we're taking justice into our own hands in this way. So that's pretty game-changing.
No, definitely. Liz Marie said that when Sully helps Mike with her shirt in Badwater, that scene doesn't have much dialogue, but you can feel what they're feeling. Great chemistry. Again, I think that's like a different take on the word game-changing. But
it is acceptable.
Yes.
I mean, that whole trip, actually, let's be honest, the whole trip in Badwater is kind of game-changing for their relationship. Like, I would agree with that.
True.
A grateful fan kind of said, game-changing moment. I want to say the birthday kiss, but was it? I don't think it was because nothing really came of it.
No. Which, you know what, is the reason I liked it, but also, yes.
Maybe it was game-changing for the viewers because we're like, now they have to get together. And then the show's like, psych.
Right. Which, honestly, that's more like real life, so I'm into it. Subfishfish on Instagram also commented about Badwater, saying the moment when Sully combs Michaela's hair and when he puts his poncho on her in the pilot.
Oh, another notch to the symbolism of that poncho. It only comes out at very important moments. You know what? I didn't actually notice that was the poncho that he put over her. I thought it was a blanket. But now that they said that, it totally was his poncho.
Yeah.
Lisa Farber-King said the pilot had the most game-changing moments, and Badwater was, echoing what I just said, Badwater was game-changing for Mike and Sully's relationship. Yeah, the pilot is setting everything up, so it's definitely going to have the most defining and game-changing parts.
Nice. Catherine Cutting. Oh, man, I forgot about this. She said when Sully gave blood to Lauren. Forgot about that.
That's a good one.
As well as somebody else, Warriors 15, Faith 15, says the birthday kiss. First real acknowledgement of their feelings and a possible future. Also when Dr. Mike goes to Sully and the Cheyenne for help, which is pretty early on.
Totally, Nicole said, season 1's game-changing moment was when Michaela decided to hide Chief Black Kettle from the army. This sets the tone for her relationship with the Cheyenne and Sully. She didn't write that, I'm adding. For the rest of the show, and is an important storyline in season 1 and the remaining seasons.
Right.
Speaking of powerful and emotional moments.
Most emotional moment.
Well, I had to say the 2 moments that made me cry, but I did talk about that I was in a very emotionally vulnerable state when watching these scenes, but I don't think that makes them any less emotional. So Brian and Zach in The Secret, I cried. And the photograph, the town photograph at the end of Portraits, I mean, I teared up. So I definitely feel like...
it's sentimental.
Yeah.
I think of the moment between Dr. Mike and Sully in the hallway before Brian's having his surgery after... I mean, Dr. Mike kind of has that outburst, like, in the room. I mean, mind you, Olive didn't help. But, you know, they're just talking and he's, like, reassuring her. And I found that very emotional, very intimate, very sentimental, for her to be able to be vulnerable and share her feelings. But I also was thinking about, when Zach is in the saloon and he shows Hank the drawing of his mom. I thought that was pretty emotional because you see Hank get like teared up. And again, anytime Hank has any like human emotion, I'm just like, okay, what is this feeling?
What am I feeling right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grateful Fan has a great one saying that the intro gets her every time. The music and seeing the characters bring it back for me each and every time I hear the song. I do love that song.
You see that train and you hear that orchestra and you're like, eh. Catherine Cutting actually agreed with you and said that the most emotional scene was when Sully and Michaela were in the hallway during the operation.
Totally Nicole said her most emotional moment was when Brian asked Dr. Mike if he could call her Ma too. The way she looks to Matthew and Colleen for permission makes me want to cry a little every time. That is a sweet moment.
Next superlative, favorite season 1 guest star.
Which, if anyone has listened to this show, should not be that hard to figure out for Sarah.
What are you talking about? I picked the most unexpected answer ever, which is JGL, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, obviously.
And I think I would pick Kenny Rogers. I thought he did a really good acting job. I like Kenny Rogers as a musician, so the majority of you wrote in saying, I'm not even going to list everybody because a lot of you said Johnny Cash, obviously.
Grateful Fan said my favorite answer ever, the bear in A Cowboy's Lullaby. Or Kenny Rogers.
Honestly, though, that's really funny. That bear did do a good job. That bear freaked me out.
We should find that bear. Give him an award. The rabid bear that I was like, just tomahawk him in the face.
Yeah, which is
Meanwhile, like 30 minutes ago, I was like, oh, I was thinking about the buffalo.
I know. Seriously. Whitley on Facebook also said Kenny Rogers, and Catherine Cutting brings up a good one, Diane Ladd, who plays Charlotte. She says Charlotte was a great character and Diane did a wonderful job. And that's true. She embodies that character well.
Well, and it's so funny because Charlotte is such an integral part of the story, and I feel like I didn't even think about her as being like a guest star, but technically she only was in one episode, but without Charlotte,
there's no storyline.
Basically, the most game-changing moment should be when Charlotte gives Dr. Mike her kids.
That's true. Why didn't we say that? We're horrible.
Because we forget that Diane Ladd made this show. Or I guess props to Bess Sullivan for writing Charlotte.
Yeah.
Definitely a really big deal. And thank you for calling her out. It's funny to me that there were so many other than Diane Ladd, obviously. Well, I don't know. She might be a singer. Is she a singer? I don't know. But like Kenny Rogers, Johnny Cash, and John Schneider, who was in A Cowboy's Lullaby, all musicians performing in Western. I wonder if there's some sort of theory about this. Obviously, we know there was some personal connections between cast members, but it is really interesting that some of the favorites of fans, as far as guest stars go, are all musicians, and they all sang in their episodes.
And speaking of singing, I'm not good at this.
We now interrupt our regularly scheduled season 1 roundup to bring you Kelly singing A Cowboy's Lullaby.
Yes, it's A Cowboy's Lullaby. I thought it might be fun to include a little musical interlude, so please enjoy my version of Cowboy's Lullaby.
Hush, little cowboy, no reason to cry. Your papa will sing you a sweet lullaby. Go to sleep, cowboy, no reason to fear. 'Cause all through the night I'll be here. I'll round up the moon for your pillow, blanket of stars for your bed. I'll round up a dream of tomorrow to ride toward the good times ahead. Coyotes singing this day to an end. Rocking horse trail waits around the next bend. So go to sleep, cowboy, your papa is here. And all through the night I'll be here. Loving you, holding
that's so pretty. So cool. On your ukulele. Is that available on SoundCloud?
It's not yet, but I can put it up there if you want.
You should. You should. I think our fans all want to support your musical endeavors. Loved it. Thanks, Kel.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening, guys. Running back to our superlatives, we have favorite medical procedure. Let's see how much you paid attention to me talking.
As far as showcasing Dr. Mike's, I don't know if spontaneity or ingenuity is the right word, but like working with what she has. I really liked Black Kettle's tracheotomy, right, where she uses like the feather and stuff, just because I feel like it's cool to see her be, I guess, creative. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is in that way.
Thinking on her feet. Like thinking on her feet.
Yeah. I also liked the Doc Eli and Dr. Mike working on Myra's oovectomy.
Oophorectomy. Nice.
Okay. That word.
That was pretty good.
I remembered the ooh part. I liked the aspect of them working together to do that.
I agree. I think my favorite was definitely Brian's open brain surgery, which was for a lot of reasons. I think mostly because I enjoyed I think it's really interesting, but also I think seeing Dr. Mike not be super confident, dealing with this internal emotional struggle of having to operate on someone she knows and loves, and, you know, all the weight that holds if he doesn't wake up the same person. So, yeah, I really enjoyed the operation, that episode as a whole, but I think his open brain surgery was my favorite. And second place would be Horace's blister. I'm kidding.
Oh, gross.
I'm just saying there was a lot of like random stuff like that, like random people.
Yeah. A grateful fan said Lauren's hernia, the play-by-play from Horace, and the roller coaster it all turned into was all entertaining, which also Audra kind of agreed and said when Jake faints during Lauren's surgery that she thought that was the best part ever. And Catherine Cutting just put the whole of the healing. All right, I'm in trouble because our next superlative is favorite/best season 1 historical reference or fact. This was too hard for me because honestly I've had so much fun pulling out so many of the historical things. I think if I had to pick favorites, there were like the little things that where you would be like, oh, I didn't think of that having any historical reference, you know, and I'd be like, let me tell you about this really cool thing. One thing that got me the most excited was in Law of the Land, when they were looking for a sheriff, and one of the ways that they were testing that was like interviewing people and then having them shoot at bottles. And the guy was like, I ran with the James gang and the Dalton gang. And I was like, can I talk to you about Wild West Outlaws? And you were like, whoa, you're like so excited about this. But
I was like, oh, didn't know you were going to go into this. But no, I did find that interesting.
I think that one was super fun. But I have to say, like, this show is fun because it gives you so much opportunity to dig as a person who loves history. Like from the last episode in Portraits where Dr. Mike's like, I once saw Daniel Webster's portrait and it was creepy. And then we looked up his portrait and we're like, oh yeah, he's kind of creepy. You know, just like little stuff like that. To other like little weird facts like that Morse kind of came up with the idea of the telegraph on a boat
that was
called the
interesting.
Sully. Like just random stuff like that is really interesting. And then at the same time, I also think about like learning about the stuff that we didn't study in school, like the Sand Creek Massacre, or I don't know if you remember when we were talking about Bloody Knife, who was Custer's
that probably is my favorite. I enjoyed learning about that.
Things like that where things that we just don't learn in history that unfortunately because we don't know these things, we're really not getting a full view of history. So I think I really just appreciated being the one not only to like look for that stuff and share it, but also learn some of it myself for the first time.
I enjoyed learning little things from you like that. I enjoyed learning about Black Kettle and the treaty and all. I think that's probably, I really enjoyed learning about the treaty and everything. I forget the name of the Indian that helped like with the treaty that then they like
something bear. Lean bear. I knew it was bear
There
something.
it is.
Lean
Yeah.
bear.
I enjoyed learning about that. And even just little stuff, like even a couple weeks ago when you were talking about the bouquet toss, like things that I had no idea where the history came from. So you're a good teacher.
Well, we learn about history so that we don't repeat it. And I think, it definitely, American history, there's a lot of hard stuff that's hard to talk about, but still just as important and relevant to things that are happening today. So,
Right.
and I guess that's definitely a special part of this show, but we also, as viewers, need to recognize that this show is literally giving us like a glimpse of things, and it's up to us to actually do the research and learn the truth and how it has impacted entire cultures and people groups. I'm namely, of course, thinking about the Native Americans and indigenous people of North America, but also, like the immigrants and their descendants and all that, telling their story, because their voices matter too. And as much as this is a show about a white woman during a period where being a woman meant you were, quote unquote, worth less, obviously Dr. Mike's experience is not even as marginalized as, like, if you think about, obviously African Americans and those who had lived as slaves, and the immigrants, as well as the indigenous peoples and the many more that I'm sure that I've glossed over. But getting a full picture and recognizing that all of those pieces are parts of what built America up to what it is today, for better and, sometimes for worse.
Right. Audra on Facebook similarly brings up that there are so many to choose from, but I'd have to say the historical events they put in about Indian conflicts and how they actually happened.
Liz Marie said, I love Sully and Mike's conversation at the beginning of the epidemic and how much there is to unpack in such a short scene, which was where we had a discussion about who was president, and that's where Lean Bear came up. That's where we talked about Johnson. We would later go on to talk about Seward and the purchase of Alaska, so lots to connect there. And a grateful fan said that their favorite historical fact was the Mad Hatter tidbit, which was something you taught us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It had something to do with Mercury, right? I kind of forget, actually.
Yeah, basically the women that were making hats were getting exposed to mercury, and so they were starting to have all these cognitive mental issues, so that's where it came Mad as a Hatter.
That one is super cool. So way to go, you.
Oh, thanks. I tried. What about your favorite theme or lesson? Which obviously we talk about a lot, but...
Yeah, and I have to say, like, I think it's probably obvious in this podcast, but this is definitely something that I feel really strong. Benji.
Okay, continue.
I know it's probably obvious from the podcast, but I do feel like our discussion of, like, lessons and themes is, like, one of the most important parts of this podcast for me. And I think that's just where, like, my passion for, like, art having significance in not just, like, in a cheesy way, like making the world a better place, but also, like, making sure that anytime we are telling stories or sharing stories, that it's saying something about the world or about people and about, the future of us, our children, our children's children, all that kind of stuff. So for me, I think what I love about Dr. Quinn, and we've talked about a lot of themes and a lot of lessons, but I think there's an overall sense of found family, as well as, like, blood family and community, and what that means to live in community with imperfect people. People have to love one another despite the fact that they all come from different backgrounds and have differences of opinion and, have different experiences, but, like, this idea of coming together. And I also, let's be honest, like, I think one of the most relevant themes, and people will make fun of Dr. Mike for all the speeches she gives, and by people I mean, like, viewers, like, everyone makes jokes, like, Dr. Mike can fix anything with a good speech, and that's not reality. But what I like about it, And obviously it's easier for her to speak up as like the town doctor and a white woman than it is maybe for like someone like Grace or cloud dancing, right? To like speak up. But this idea of speaking up against injustice and speaking up for what you believe is right, because it's preaching the opposite of what I think some cultural stances are, which is very much like a bystander stance, right? Where we watch and we think in our head, that's wrong, that shouldn't be happening, but then we don't say anything or do anything.
Right. Which is exactly what I said, that my favorite theme for this show was, one, what you said.
I stole yours.
Family above all else is a huge thing, which I think is awesome. And a reason I like this show so much, but also, yeah, fighting for what you believe, not being afraid to do or say something is a main theme every single episode. So yeah, it's a reason I really like this show. It's also family friendly, it's wholesome, it's not boring, it's funny, it's serious, like it's so many things, but I would say those are the two main things, like you said, speaking up and family, which are, yeah, like deep things. Like some people I know watch TV to just like forget about life and, you know, just distract your mind, but I think this show does a lot more than that, which is what I'm looking for when I'm watching TV.
Yeah, and Catherine Cunning kind of echoed this and said that the themes that she enjoyed was Sully's healing, which I'm sure is like both physically and maybe some emotionally, and Michaela and the children like calling him family, so this idea of family.
Audra, which will be interesting to see what you think about this, says, Olive and Mike coming together to form a relational bond after Lauren's surgery. The way Olive tells Dr. Mike that no matter what happened, she doesn't blame her and knows she did everything she could for her brother. It's a touching moment.
No, it is, and we liked that scene when we talked about it. I think the reason we kind of forget about it is because
all the stuff that happens after.
Well, yeah, like the Olive from that episode never kind of shows up again. Julie said that season 1 only has 17 episodes, but a reoccurring theme, which I wouldn't call this a theme. I would call this more of like foreshadowing, or more of like a reoccurring subject, is that the railroad is coming, and we see Sully specifically pushing back at the idea of quote unquote progress each time. And that maybe is more of a theme, like Sully fighting progress, like this fight against what people call progress, which really in Portraits we talked about is greed and wanting more and all this kind of thing. But the railroad coming obviously is definitely a topic. It's a subject that shows up over and over again, which is very notable.
The next one, can't wait to talk about this. Inconsequential character or plot lines. So things that they could have or should have cut out.
Personally, and people might disagree with me on this, I think Ethan Cooper coming back was too soon.
Yeah, because what episode is that?
Well, and I don't even mean too soon in this season. I think it could have been saved for a future season. Because, I mean, as a whole, Father's Day wasn't a very balanced episode, I would say. But also just him coming in not too long after Charlotte's
death
died, doing what he does and all that kind of, like, I almost feel like it would have been more impactful if we had the Cooper kids like alone with Dr. Mike for longer. I just felt like it was too early in the season where we were just establishing Dr. Mike's relationship with the kids and like living with her, and then having him show up. I feel like it actually would have been stronger if we had the children a little more conflicted.
Right.
But I feel like it would have been more impactful if we had given the family, Dr. Mike and the kids' family, like more time, like a whole season to be a family, and then bring him in and then have that real tear.
Right.
The other thing that I would kind of argue, and I hate to do this, but I think it was poorly used. So there's the cloud dancing does the ceremony on Dr. Mike during the epidemic, which is what ends up they've run out of the quinine or whatever, and that's what ends up healing her of her influenza. And it's not that I don't like the idea of cloud dancing performing native remedies on Dr. Mike. I just think in the context of the episode, it was not explained very well. And then the fact that they bring her back so that everyone else can also be healed because of the tea. Like, it was weird. Like, why did she have to go into the woods to do this, to then come back with the tea to give to everyone, which would heal some of the rest of the people? They were trying to do something which was introduce more native remedies into the show, which I like. I like when Dr. Mike is learning from cloud dancing, but I don't think it worked within the context of that particular episode.
Right. Those are both like more serious things. I just think Colleen's obsession with Sully in Heroes, totally unnecessary, did not need to be an entire episode plot line. Honestly, you could have done that without that whole you could have done without the whole episode and your life would be better, actually. Which, grateful fan, my homegirl.
Yeah, your homegirl. I feel like, yeah, you two often agree with each other.
Because she wrote us and said, I think this was supposed to be probably about an inconsequential character, but I think the whole episode, Heroes, was totally unnecessary. The plot and the character development literally added nothing. The relationship between Colleen and Horace's nephew didn't even turn into anything in later episodes this season either. Yeah, like what? What was the point of that? Like, just to be like, oh, see, we don't feel as bad for her now because a boy her age likes her. Like, it's just so dumb. The whole thing was so dumb.
It was just weak, right? I think that's fair. Because I think you're right. Like, if you did just, like, remove that episode, what would it change? It wouldn't really change anything.
Nope.
Anyways.
Totally Nicole wrote in and said, they definitely could have cut Cowboy's Lullaby. What was even the point of that? I think she means the episode as a whole.
She does mean the episode as the whole. I feel like I could vouch for Cowboy's Lullaby because that was also about racism, right? Like the way that they treated that baby.
Yeah.
Simply because he had an Indian mother. I think they wanted to have that moment where we as the audience realize how much losing his baby meant to Sully. The fact that he's like, if I could have my kid back, you know, I'd never let them out of my sight. And then later with the bear, which obviously, Nicole, the bear, what about the bear?
Best character.
The best minor character. Guest star, the best guest star. But when he tells Dr. Mike, like, he wants to take the baby, like, this idea of what that means. But it was also, we were getting the reference that when they ask Black Kettle and Cloud Dancing to take the baby, and they're like, we barely have enough food to feed ourselves. Like, that's like such a small thing, but I hope people realize, like, historically, Native tribes were forced onto reservations and then literally were, like, starving to death, you know, like, it's not a beautiful part of American history, but it's something that happened and it's something that's impacted, you know, tribes that are still in present day. And anyway,
right.
So I feel like maybe the whole, no shade to John Schneider, but like his particular character with the thieving and then giving up the money, like it's almost weirdly similar also to like Father's Day in a weird way, right? But I think there were significant like beats that they were trying to hit for Sully's character as well as for like the town's perspective on race and even like this idea of like mixed race, which is, they didn't dive into it that deep, but I think they were trying something, and I don't know, that they quite hit the mark, but
they tried.
Yeah.
Concerning a inconsequential character, Petula says, Emily, I hated her. I don't think her character helped the story of the development of the other characters. She was just there. I mean, I kind of said that. I kind of said, like, she just exists as, like, a minor townsperson that we know, like, a little bit about, but I'm not, I mean, you probably could have done without her. I'm sorry to that actress.
In the defense of Emily, I don't know why I'm defending everything. In the defense of Emily, if her baby is not born by Dr. Mike, then Dr. Mike doesn't connect with Emily, and Emily doesn't tell Dr. Mike, hey, you want to get decisions made in this town? Join the quilting club. Is it a club? Circle. The quilting circle.
The club. It could have been any character, though. Do you know what I mean? It could have been any character, and it would have been fine.
Fair point.
It's fine.
It could have, but it wasn't any character.
Yeah.
All right. And this, I feel like these two kind of tie in together. So we just talked about things that you would kind of be okay with them giving up or leaving out. And now we're going to talk about characters / plots or ideas that you wish had been expanded on in season 1. What do you think, Kel?
I mean, there's plenty of things that probably could have been given more context, and some of it we may get more of as you watch later seasons, but I think obviously there could have been a lot more given on the Cheyenne, but especially Sully's connection to them. I think we get a lot more information I expected on Sully and his background, but even then, like, there's a lot that we don't understand. Like, okay, well, when his wife died and his child died, how did he end up spending so much time with the Cheyenne? How did they accept him? How did he even have any inkling towards this lifestyle? The other thing I was thinking is, well, just as a medical person, I think Dr. Mike's medical background, I think there's just a lot that doesn't get explained other than, like, her dad was a doctor. She worked in his clinic. At some point, she's like, I'm a surgeon. I personally would like to know more of her background and more of the stuff she dealt with, but I get why it's not that important for the show. And the only other thing I would say is David, which again, if you watch more seasons, you probably will get more information. But yeah, he's just sprinkled in there here and there, and I think, like, there could have been a lot more information given about that part of Dr. Mike's life and that relationship and how that affected the choices she made after that, because I think it definitely did.
Yeah, I would agree with all of those. Like, Sully, we mention Abigail, and, like, Dr. Mike, we mention David, but they don't actually let those characters really explore those relationships past. They let them explore some of their feelings about them, but they don't actually explore, like, them as people. Like, we don't know what Abigail was like. We don't know what David was like. I also agree, I would have loved a lot more Native American exploration. I think Matthew and Colleen got the short end of the stick. All of the Matthew-centric episodes are centered around Matthew and Ingrid, which is kind of interesting because usually that's, like, a thing they do with female characters where if they're focusing on them, it's always, like, their relationships. We didn't really get to know Matthew as a character himself out, like, in most of the rest of the episodes. The pilot, like, set up some things about him, but then, so I agree also with everything that you said. Some of our write-ins, Lisa Farber King said, I wish they had expanded on Charlotte's character and that she was around longer, which Catherine Cutting also agreed. Charlotte, we got a good glimpse of her character, but not what motivates her. So that's really interesting. Like, I wonder how the story would have changed if Charlotte had been kept around longer and
Right.
we'd been given an opportunity to really establish that friendship between Dr. Mike and Charlotte. It would have changed a lot of things, but it would have been interesting.
Definitely. Warriors Faith 15 says they would have liked to know more about Hank's backstory. How and why did he start the saloon? And totally, Nicole agrees with you in saying that she wishes Colleen and Matthew had been expanded on, especially in the pilot, because we learn about them, but not as much as I think we could have. There is a lot more that's focused on Brian, and that is true. You said that.
Now, we had a split decision, right? In the last, Petoulis was like away with Emily, but then we have Robin and Alex. Both said, I wish Emily would have stayed in the show. I liked her character. I really wanted her to continue to become close to Dr. Mike.
Interesting enough, Julie also said that 2 minor characters introduced in season 1 that will reoccur, but are Mean Girl Alice and Sweet Girl Becky. I wish we got to see more of Alice during the show, but the actress, made the most out of what she got. I think, like, there probably just wasn't enough time to do that, and we will see them again, but interesting take. It's fun seeing what you guys think.
Let's talk about performance highlights, because we got to give props to actors who take lines of words off a script and bring them to life in a very real way, and in a way that makes us as the audience connect and really believe in what's happening on the screen.
I know that we both said, remember when you were telling me about Colmini?
Colm Meaney. Yeah, Irish actor.
Colm Meaney.
Yes.
Anyway, the whole tooth pulling scene, I think we
Yep.
both can agree on
Yep.
his side and Dr. Mike's is pretty great acting.
Yep.
I think the other one I really enjoyed is Joe Lando when Sully was paralyzed. I think he did a great job physically, like to be able to physically act like someone's touching you and you can't feel it, or to like not move. I think it's interesting and difficult, and I think he also captured the emotional roller coaster that his character was going on during that season of his life very well. What about you?
I mean, I got a shout out to of my list when I think about moments where I was just like, wow, I'm totally captivated by this performance and believing everything this character is saying and doing, is Franklin in The Great American Medicine Show when he's talking to Sully and Cloud Dancing about losing his tribe and his family. And just, I think also knowing that in that moment in the show, he is a voice for many. Like, that's not just his story. It's unfortunately the story of many, many indigenous peoples of North America. But just, I think that performance is a standout, especially for, you know, I didn't think of him as maybe a really good guest star, but I would add him also to my list. But just really, really that performance still stands out to me as really moving. I also think Jim Noblock in Happy Birthday, when he's going through the withdrawal, the alcohol withdrawal,
That's true.
I just, so believable and heartbreaking, and also, you know, a little bit frustrating because you're like, oh, you did this to yourself. And, you know, just, yeah, the wrestling of the emotions and just the fear and just really, really a good performance.
Definitely. We had some people write in and say, Sully in Running Ghost. That's from Grateful Fan, who says, in the bed, paralyzed. This is agreeing with me. Went from feeling sorry for himself to joy that he moved his toes to anger, wanting revenge. I couldn't keep up with all the emotions, but I think he does do a great job with that.
Subfishfish added that Michaela, as in Jane Seymour, and her mother, Elizabeth Wyman, in The Visitor. She said, I love the character development in that episode.
We also have Catherine Cutting says the operation, everyone during Brian's surgery was great.
Agreed.
As well as Totally Nicole, who says that the scene where the kids come to live with Mike, everyone does such a good job conveying the hurt and the fear that the characters are feeling, which is true. I forgot about that scene a little bit.
Yeah. Liz Marie says the bridge scene between Mike and Sully during Portraits, I think it was a really honest scene. They both had really difficult pasts, and it was not easy to open up to someone after having your heart broken.
Grateful Fan 2 says, I love how Joe Lando made the character of Sully so believable by learning how to ride bareback and throw the tomahawk. Kudos to Beth Sullivan for finding him. America thanks you. The world thanks you. But you've said that, how you thought that was cool that he did learn to do all those things.
Yeah, which is so interesting too, because is it a performance then, right? If he really learned those skills, he just throws
That's
the
true.
tomahawk. It's not really a performance. It's just Joe Lando throwing a tomahawk being awesome. But yeah, no, for sure. Superlative, best season 1 character progression or growth. I think actually between you and me and all the write-ins, top vote was for Sully. Everyone said Sully has had the most growth and progression as a character in this season. Do you want to add to why you kind of picked him, and then we can kind of skim through what everybody else says?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of growth in the way that he handles his relationships, his communication skills, the way that he cares for people. We see, you know, I just think about the pilot, the way that he was very cold and standoffish to the way that he develops relationship with Dr. Mike and her family is a big deal. And I think that our friend Catherine brings up a good point in saying that he went from being a very quiet, in the shadows widower to being the friend and father figure to the Cooper children, and he becomes Michaela's confidant.
Petoulas agreed. Sully, Totally Nicole said, Sully has the best character development. He goes from mysterious stranger to someone Mike and the kids and the audience trust and love. Grateful Fan 2.0 pointed out that I love how Sully/Joe always comes down to Brian's level when he speaks to him. So kind of showing his mindfulness as a character. And Grateful Fan 1, the OG, said that Sully in Bad Water has the most character progression. He started off as such a prideful jerk in that episode, and that episode ended with him and Dr. Mike also both softening and letting their guard down a little bit. But then Rebecca did add in the healing when Lauren gives Sully the deed for the homestead. That also shows character growth. I think it also shows relationship development. My vote for character growth and progression is Dr. Mike.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think that's what you'd expect. And it's not all that her growth is not all even like positive or perfect, but we see her develop. We see consistency with her character and all that kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed watching her in the
Definitely.
season.
She's the most fun to watch. I think she is the character that develops the most. Which, you know, the show is called Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, but whatever. That's my answer to it. What about your favorite and your least favorite element of season 1, just like overall? Anything in general, favorite, least favorite thing?
My favorite is just the premise of the show. I remember Dr. Mike talking to Charlotte, where Charlotte was like, you're a woman, you're a single woman, you're from the city, and you're a doctor. Like, all these things put you in this weird category of like trying to do life here. The premise of all of that is really unique and fun and just really fascinating to watch develop. Least favorite elements, I have to say this, I talked about this a lot last episode, but obviously representation is important. And so I think recognizing that this is a story that is being told from a white perspective, and while they do have characters of color and marginalized people groups, hopefully going forward there will still be a mindfulness to how they are presented and trying to tell a rounded story of many perspectives. And I do think that's a goal of the show. So I think where I would say my least favorite elements is when they miss the mark.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree with that. I think it happens, unfortunately, a number of times. Obviously, I don't think many of them were purposeful, but right. I'd agree that that's probably my least favorite too. And I think there are just a lot of inconsistencies of characters, which honestly gave us something to talk about, so I shouldn't be too mad about it. But those random storylines, inconsistencies of characters made it difficult sometimes. But my favorite would definitely be just, I mean, I kind of already said it before, but the family aspect, the family theme, the medicine, I really enjoy. Like, believe it or not, you guys, like, it's helped me, like, in physician assistant school. When I think about certain things, I think about Dr. Quinn, and then I'm able to relate, like, okay, here's the symptoms, here's how you diagnose, here's how you treat, like, so that's been really fun to be able to, like, one, learn more about it myself, but also share that has been fun for me, just overall, seeing the show in a different way, because I enjoyed that before, but I also I wasn't in some sort of medical schooling, so it's way more fun now.
On Instagram, TVJunk13 said, I enjoyed season 1. It created the build-up for the rest of the stories, but I wish they kept better track of the stories and the characters' personalities. I think it is really obvious that every episode is written by a different person, and that creates weird moments here and there and inconsistencies. But at the end of the day, I fell in love with Mike from episode 1, and I'm struggling to find a series right now that captures me like this, mistakes and all. I think it's because Mike has clear purpose and a very distinctive personality that draws you in.
Liz Marie in her email said, what impressed me the most while watching this show again is how amazingly well the show has aged. Other shows make me cringe to rewatch, but Dr. Quinn is so current and it is a shock. It made me sad that some issues in the 1800s were still there in the 1990s, but what devastated me is that those same issues are here in 2021. It made me believe that the show was way ahead of its time. Sure, TV now apparently needs more violence and sex, but this show was and is amazing in its own way. It's eye-opening.
And our final superlative is just an overall reflection of your enjoyment of season 1 as a whole.
Which I feel like I don't really need to say too much. I kind of just explained why I enjoy it. Like we said, it includes family, romance, history, medicine, community, social issues, so many things, but it's fun to watch and get to know the characters better. I think one of my main things was getting to see Dr. Mike become more confident as a physician and as a mom. was pretty cool to watch.
I think I said this in like our introductory episode, looking forward to Not a Lady podcast. Obviously, I have great nostalgia for this show, so I can't watch it now without that being a part of my viewing experience, and I know I'm not alone in that at all.
Right.
But I also think I said in our introductory episode that Dr. Quinn kind of hits a sweet spot for both you and for me, right? And for me, it's like these aspects of history and the animals and the Wild West and the cultures that are brought in, like the native connection. Like that is something I think that, I mean, Westerns are still a very popular genre. I think obviously not as popular as in the what we would call the quote-unquote TV land days. But there is something about the genre that is very special. Or not, special is probably the wrong word, but it's something that hasn't gone away. It keeps coming back. And I think also the family-friendly nature of the show, like I like to describe, like shows that I really love are ones that I can watch it with my 10-year-old brother. He's not 10 anymore, but I can watch it with my 10-year-old brother and I can watch it with my mom and I never have to worry about what's going to happen next. And there are shows like that are
unheard
not
of.
like that. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Just to sum up some of the stuff that you guys wrote in, Grateful Fan OG said, well, obviously I'm a fan and I do enjoy other seasons better, but you kind of have to have season 1 to enjoy the rest of the series, which is totally true.
Catherine Cutting on Instagram said, season 1 is my favorite season. Even the episodes I don't care for are good episodes. When my mom told me about this show, I never knew I would fall in love with it from moment number 1. Dr. Quinn has allowed me to see this day and age a little bit differently. It has given me insight into the post-Civil War culture that we often forget about.
Totally. Nicole says, as a viewer, I really enjoyed getting to know and explore the characters. I also enjoy watching the characters grow and their relationships with one another. I think season 1 has some of the strongest writing and continuity the show has to offer.
And once upon a time, Jane Seymour wrote, I love season 1. It's my favorite season because everything falls into place. The portrait episode with the finale with the photo of the city by Daniel Watkins makes me cry every time. Good feelings, guys. It's a good show. And we finished season 1.
I know. It's wild.
Great superlatives. Thanks for everyone who wrote in. We enjoyed talking about that. So we told you guys that we were going to have a special season 1 trivia game. However, you guys not only showed up, but you showed up in a super big way. And there are a lot of questions. So we decided instead of doing the trivia game as a part of our roundup episode, we're going to save it for a special bonus episode, which I know is so exciting. Some of you guys are like, wait, more Not a Lady podcast bonus content? I know, guys, we're living large over here. So yes, please keep an eye out for a bonus trivia game episode. And that means if you're listening to this and you want to send in more questions, feel free to, though we did get a good number. We have not read them. Be so impressed with us. We saved them. So, which means that now I want to talk about the podcast a little bit because this is both of our first podcasts that we've ever created. And when Kelly and I started this show, it was really a big part of it was sister bonding. And that's basically what I tell everyone is like,
true.
When they're like, you're talking about Dr. Quinn? Why? And I'm like, because it's a way for my sister and I to hang out and do something together. And we really thought that there was going to be 20 listeners, of which would be our mom and our closest friends that we forced to listen. But you, the listeners, have been amazing. And as I last checked, we have had over 6,000 plays across all our different streaming services, which is incredible. Our episodes have averaged about 94 minutes, which this one's probably going to mess up that average, but about an hour and a half. Our top 3 episodes with the most listens, of course, are the pilot, Law of the Land, that is the power of Johnny Cash, I think, and The Visitor, which I haven't quite figured that one out yet, but apparently people like The Visitor.
Also, what blows my mind is Obviously, we're both American, and I'm currently in the US. My sister's currently in the South Pacific. But I'm just shocked because we have listeners from 41 countries. I did the math because I was like, that's a lot of countries. How many countries? That's 41 countries. But technically, that's 21% of the countries in the world. Obviously, 78% of that are USA listeners, but I can't believe that. So thanks for all of you guys that are listening overseas.
Yeah, it's amazing to, like, Canada, Germany, Australia, the UK are, like, the top 4, like, non-American countries that listen. So if you're from those countries, hey, and if you are, like, that one person who's living in Slovakia, hey, I'm just kidding. We were, like, reading through the list of countries when we were prepping for this episode, and we were both like, oh, really? So it's been pretty amazing. You want to shout out your friends in Turkey and Peru, right?
Yes, and Peru and Canada. Yep, definitely. And France. Yes. I know we were talking about the length of our episodes before we were talking about countries. And did you know that our longest episode was the pilot, actually? Which isn't super surprising, but...
It makes sense. To be fair, Portraits was like 3 minutes under. We had a lot to say.
Our shortest one was A Cowboy's Lullaby, which...
A cowboy's?
A Cowboy's Lullaby. A Cowboy's Lullaby. Which I'm not sure why, like if there was a certain reason that was shorter, or if there was just less to say, but...
You know, the bear was such a great guest star that we just like, that's all we really had to talk about. I do remember why. The reason was it did not really have any medical or historical context.
Oh.
That's why. So there wasn't much extra for us to talk about.
Right.
And speaking of like length of episodes, I did the math and we have spent over 42 and a half hours recording content for season 1. That is including like our introductory episode, which means that
that's wild.
In turn, it means that I have spent over 129 hours editing. Because it's
she's
like
the real MVP, you guys.
It's like for every hour of recording, it's about like 2 to 3 hours of like editing or something like that. I figured out the math, which means that I've spent like a total of 5 days nonstop editing the podcast. Which means some of you are like, wait, editing? We didn't know you edited. No, I know that. You're not saying that. But your question is probably like, wait, what? So if we've recorded 42.5 hours, if you actually look at the podcast, we've actually only released 27 hours of content. So you, listener, if you've listened to every single one of our episodes, have listened to about 27 hours of content, not including, obviously, this one, which means that over 50% of our recordings have not made it online. And I know some of you are like, wait,
how is this possible? All you guys do is talk. That's what our mom's thinking.
What is all that stuff that ended up, as they say in the creative world, like ended up on the cutting room floor? Well, I, in my editing over the past 9 months, have been keeping some of our greatest cuts and bloopers.
This is the surprise that I didn't know about?
This is a surprise for Kelly and a surprise for our listeners. I do have a super cut of some of the content that was cut or bloopers that were not kept in final episodes. And you'll probably, when you listen, you'll see why it was cut. And you'll also see...
Did I approve this?
You did not approve this at all, but it's happening. And it was really fun to put together. And literally, as I've been editing through the past couple months, sometimes as I was cutting something, I would just throw it into this other file, and I compiled it all together. So without further ado, I would like to premiere for the first time Not a Lady Podcast Season 1 Cuts, Bloopers / a gag reel of Kelly and I in all our glory. So here we go. Are you recording? Just double check.
Okay, now I did.
Not play, you gotta push record. And a big part of that was at one point Charles Dickens ended up in a
You said Darl's Dickens.
Darl's chickens.
Sorry, that was funny. That was
Not
like
putting
me
that in.
last week.
Yeah, we're in trouble. Has gotten older because last we checked with
Yeah.
Colleen, she was 13.
And we know that Abigail was, what, 16 when they got married?
No, we know
18?
that from rite of passage, Abigail was 18. So
18.
unless Colleen...
Is suddenly 17 years old. I mean, that's really bad math. Who am
Good
I,
math.
you?
I'm bad at math.
Yeah, unless she's...
No, 16. No, 15.
I hate that
Wow.
so much. My brain hurts. That's my defense.
Unless
What's yours?
she's 15 years old.
Right.
My riding instructor, her favorite horse was struck by lightning and died. So, the more you know. I hate this scene. I hate the writing in this scene.
I was like, it's probably because of the horses, isn't it?
No, they're not on horses. We just talked about that.
So why did you say riding?
Writing.
Oh. I'm dumb. That literally took
Writing.
me like 5 seconds.
They ask how Colleen is, and you jerk, I really thought you were frozen.
I wanted you to think that. And then you kept going and I'm like, oh, she must have saw me blink.
No, it took me a second. You
Sorry. At the beginning of the episode are getting ready to leave and
Glitch, you're a robot. That was like robot noise.
Guys, PA school's frying my brain. Can you hear my stomach growling?
No.
It's so loud. When it's not just like a tiny infarction, like, yeah, it's infarction? That's definitely a medical word. What's the word I'm looking for? I can be
Hot
your
take, the real hero
baby.
of this. Hot take, the real
I need
hero.
a hero. I'm holding out for. I'm just gonna sing all the songs I can think about. We have to put some like older references because
be
people don't like that we're doing all this
heroes
like
forever and ever.
What's that?
Peter Gabriel. It also was in Moulin Rouge.
Well, I don't think you did it justice because I didn't recognize it and I know that song. Wow.
You
Kelly.
probably only know the Stranger Things version.
Oh my gosh, that's mean to say. I know songs. You know that I listen to a lot of 70s, 80s.
Hot take,
Anyway.
the real hero of this episode is Wolf.
It's probably my most least liked. Right now you have to
That
understand.
fix that terrible grammar. Most least liked, you're fired. Try again.
It's not a not a Weebly. Not a lady at Weebly, Weebly.
No, podcast.
Not a lady podcast. Weebly, Weebly.com. Yeah. Yeah.
We had a couple.
Just go. I don't even know what I'm gonna say.
Are you second guessing every time you're saying the word episode now? Because I am.
I literally, when I read that, I was like, wait, how do other people say it? It's not like episode. I'm like, SODE. How else are you supposed to say that? Episode.
Yeah. No, I know. Which, pause. I should have looked this up. Why does he say eagle, not bald eagle? When did the bald eagle
Become bald.
get named?
Why are you looking at me like that?
I'm not. You're right. I'm listening.
Yes, you are. The first brain surgery ever to be officially done and recorded, mind you, was 1979.
Whoa.
He removed a brain tumor.
That's almost 100 years from now, by the way. 100 years from
I
now
said the
in
wrong
Dr.
thing.
Quinn.
No, I said the wrong thing. It's 1879. Start over. I'm like, why are you freaking out?
No.
What sound effects?
There was just the sound of the ASMR.
No. So Olive says, I'm not leaving until I watch you eat.
Which I shouldn't have laughed here, but part of me was like, so basically what she's telling Dr. Mike is if you eat, then I'll know that you don't want me here.
I didn't get that. because everything seems fine, but you
Right.
know, everything is not what it seems.
Can play into... There's an airplane. Please hold. It's
I can't
so
hear
loud.
anything.
But it's setting off my thing.
Please hold.
Podcast. Nope. All of our podcast streaming.
We then get to see a little bit look inside the okay. We then are able to go to the school and kind of get in. What is wrong with the words in my mouth?
Now, why women, you ask? Simple.
They're superior.
Women were
Just kidding. Do not put that in there. I will get like.
I wish.
Don't put that in there. No.
No, unfortunately women were cheaper.
Yeah, that's his readiness. What's readiment? What is the? That's not a word, but like, what is it called? What's the noun for ready? Anyway, definitely nobody's perfect. Cue Hannah Montana. Don't put that in. People will judge me.
I gotta work it.
People will judge me for that reference.
Or they'll just be like, wow, your age is showing. A really good analysis that I want to share, a really fascinating analysis, and okay. Fran also had a August, September, October, November, December, January, March, April, May.
You forgot February. You definitely just went January, March.
February,
October,
like,
November,
was
December,
lost
January,
to my
February,
brain.
March, April, May. See you in the next one. We already said
Yes, we
that.
did. I'll edit. Okay.
Okay, stop.
How long is
2.5
it?
hours.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Sorry.
All right.
Let's get down to business. Do not include that. I will actually kill you. Oh my gosh. I'm busting up laughing as you say. That is so funny. Actually though, some of those I haven't never heard them. Like, and they happen, but I never heard them.
I mean, that's the funny thing is with me being the one who does the editing, like I not only participate, but then I also listen. So it's really, yeah, I was like, I bet you she won't even remember that she did some of these things. But basically, it's every time. I got lots of compliments for all my singing, but that's because every time Kelly would sing, she would tell me to cut it.
Because I'd be like, oh, this is a reference someone's gonna judge me for knowing or something stupid.
I also liked
That was
that
so
it
funny.
definitely showcased like our sister moments where you're like, why are you
Yes.
looking at me like that?
and I mean, all of this is over Zoom too, so that's what's so funny is
Yeah.
we're looking at each other. but
And
not
if
really.
we didn't edit, you would get so much of us going
Of that. Start over. Why don't I know English? Oh my goodness, all the time. Especially when we would start, we'd be like, wow, I'm like rusty or something.
Yeah.
That is so funny. Oh, that's really fun. Yeah, Sarah didn't tell me she was gonna do that. She just told me she had a surprise, so that's super fun to listen to. I'm cracking up.
Yeah.
Also, sometimes I'm like, wow, I sound really dumb. Us trying to do math, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, for real. For real. It was really funny. It's been fun, like, collecting those for the past couple months. You also pointed out the number of times that we said our own website wrong. It's basically every episode we would say it wrong.
Every episode, we'd have to redo that part because she'd be like, okay, your turn to do it. And I'd be like, not a lady, Weebly at Gmail, not a lady podcast every time having to redo it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, super fun.
Oh, that's so funny, Sarah. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Get a little sneak peek behind the scenes. Honestly, I think it gives them a better idea of how much work goes into this. Because
Well, now you know why literally we have 42 and a half hours of recording, but we've only published 27.
Yeah, you didn't even include all the times that, we'll like go on a rant about something for 20 minutes and only like 2 minutes of it goes in the podcast.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
the other thing is Kelly and I realized that we sometimes repeat ourselves a lot because we get really excited and then we just talk about the same thing. So yeah,
Right.
definitely that. But thanks for those of you who have listened to all 27 hours, and now you got a sneak peek into the chaos that is the rest. All right, so next for our roundup, we want to talk about finalizing our episode ranking. Do you want to read through our list?
Yes. We'll start from the bottom. Ranked last right now is Father's Day. That's number 17. Number 16, Heroes. 15, Rite of Passage. 14 is The Healing. 13, A Cowboy's Lullaby. 12, Epidemic. 11, Law of the Land. 10, Portraits. 9, The Prisoner. 8 is Running Ghost. And 7 is The Great American Medicine Show. Number 6 is The Visitor. Number 5 being The Secret. 4 is The Pilot. And our top 3 currently. 3rd place, Badwater. 2nd place, Happy Birthday. And ranked number 1, The Operation. So the question is, do we want to change anything? Is there anything you feel could be moved around? Anything you're not really happy with where it's sitting? What are your thoughts? And just to remind everybody, at the end of every podcast, Sarah and I rank each episode in a list from our favorite to our least favorite, best to worst. And we do have a set of criteria, which includes what, Sarah?
It includes, obviously, personal preference definitely plays a part, but writing, story, performances, themes and values, character development, conflict, memorability, and of course our last one, which I think often is the determiner when we're kind of stuck somewhere, the likelihood to watch again.
So, give me your thoughts, sister.
Yeah, well, I think I told you at the end of Portraits, because I am the one who edits the episodes, we recorded The Secret, and after The Secret, I was editing. We put The Secret as number 5, but I think it's too high. I think it ended up a little bit higher than it should be, straight up because of my love for Joseph Gordon-Levitt. So
she admits.
I do think it's a good episode, but looking at where it sits right now, it sits between The Pilot and The Visitor, which, I mean, the pilot's always such a hard thing anyway. Like, part of me is like, the pilot shouldn't even be on this list, but because it stands very much alone in a way that most of the rest of these episodes don't. But I definitely, like, looking at where it's sitting, it's definitely too high. I think The Visitor is a better episode. I think The Great American Medicine Show is one of the most well-rounded episodes, and I've said before that I think it's one of the strongest performance-wise. So I'm looking at Running Ghost. I feel like Running Ghost is definitely... The thing about The Secret is also The Secret isn't really about any of our main characters, right? It actually focuses a lot more on Hank and obviously Zach, and in turn, Brian. It's kind of a Brian-centric episode. So it's not as good as The Visitor. I think Great American Medicine Show is better. I think I personally like it better than Running Ghost, but not better than The Prisoner.
I'd probably put it somewhere in there too. I think I like Running Ghost a lot, but I'd be okay if it went above that. I mean, I do agree that it probably is too high, actually. I'm realizing how many great episodes there are, though, because I'm like, oh, I love that episode.
Yeah.
But honestly, if you wanted to put it between Great American Medicine Show and Running Ghost, I would be okay with that. That would make it the new 7th place.
Yeah, well, but if you like Running Ghost, I'll go under Running Ghost.
It's okay, though.
I usually get my way, so...
Oh, what is this?
It's still top 10.
Good thing I have that recorded for future purposes.
Unless I edit it out.
That's true. That's true.
No, I'm just kidding. But I think if it's the new number 8, that still puts it in top 10, and I do think it is
top 10 material.
I stand by the bottom half, like Father's Day, Heroes, Rite of Passage, The Healing, Cowboy's Lullaby. First of all, there's things in those episodes that, like, personal preference that I don't like. There's conflicts of interest in the theme or in the characters, like doing and saying things that just maybe don't work. I would say those are not some of the strongest performances. I stand by the Operation. I think Operation is well-rounded. I know, like, things people who definitely are invested in Dr. Quinn because of the Sully, Dr. Mike dynamic are going to be like, no, Badwater, Happy Birthday, those are better. But I don't think the center of the show is just Sully and Dr. Mike.
Right.
As a couple, I mean. Like, it is about them, but as a couple, it's not necessarily only about them as a couple. It's about them as characters. And I think the Operation really shows a well-rounded, like, conflict as well as, like, reconciliation between them. I think it's one of the strongest themes when the whole town comes together to build the school.
Definitely. I agree.
Happy Birthday is a good episode. It has strong performances. Bad Water is, like, very memorable.
Love.
It really gives space for the characters of Dr. Mike and Sully not only to develop individually but also as a couple, which I think a lot of people point out. I mean, it's unfair. The pilot has more time to do more, which is why the pilot is still so high. The Visitor, I think, is amazing development for Dr. Mike. Like, we learn a lot about her with her mom being there. It makes sense. Unlike what I said earlier with Ethan Cooper kind of coming in too early, I think bringing the mom in so early actually really worked well because we were still getting to know Dr. Mike. So seeing, quote unquote, where she came from versus like where she is now and where she's headed. And then you look at, like, Running Ghost, The Secret, The Prisoner. Those are all, like, high stakes, a lot of conflict. The Running Ghost and The Prisoner are more like life and death conflict, whereas, like, The Secret and Portraits is more relationship conflict. So do you have any other thoughts looking at the list?
I agree with our top 5. I agree with the list right now. Like, I feel good about the ones we have at the top and good at the ones we have at the bottom. And even the ones that I'm like, oh, I thought I liked that, but I know we had other reasons to rank things for certain, reasons. I really enjoyed Portraits, so part of me is like, oh, that's number 10. Like, I feel like it would have made it a lot higher. But then when I look at, Running Ghost, The Visitor, Bad Water, and I think, those were wonderful episodes. So, no, I mean, honestly, I feel good with it.
Why did we pick Portraits to go under The Prisoner? I don't really remember why.
We did talk it out, though. I remember us talking it out. I think because a lot of the Native American storyline was much better than that existed in Portraits, which I think was a big factor.
Would I change it?
Not necessarily.
And I wouldn't move Law of the Land up because we talked about, Law of the Land was kind of an unsatisfying ending, at least for me personally.
Yeah.
Unsatisfying? Dissatisfying? Yeah, so maybe if we leave it, because that's still number 10, that puts it more or less still in the middle.
I feel good about it.
Okay. Well, I will update we'll make it our official ranking.
One thing we did tell you guys in the last few episodes is that we would be looking at some of the reviews you've left us over this season. And you guys are super, super kind and have left us a number of reviews. So Sarah and I thought we would read some. And for those of you who didn't get to listen to every episode this season, hopefully it will give you a good reason to come back.
We also wanted to shout out people who have given reviews, because I think when you're at home creating something like this where it's just two sisters having a conversation about a show we grew up on, sometimes it's just nice to know that we're not just having fun alone, but that other people are also enjoying it. So
even if we were just having fun alone, it would be worth it to me.
It would be worth it, but I think it's nice to hear from other people. Someone wrote in, "Love this Dr. Quinn podcast. It's so well done with interesting historical and medical facts thrown in that go along with the episodes and funny stories too. I can't wait for more episodes. Sarah and Kelly are so enjoyable to listen to. Thank you."
Seriously, thank you. Someone else said it's funny, entertaining, and educational. The world of Dr. Quinn has come alive in a new way in 2020. From deep medical analysis to historical insights big and small, Sarah and Kelly do incredible research, all the while provide fun and thoughtful commentary on each new episode of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. 100% recommend this podcast. I feel like this is going to make me get emotional reading these. This is so nice.
Thank you. Someone else, this is another podcaster, so I do want to shout out to them, said, how did I not know this podcast existed? I love this. I've seen every episode of Dr. Quinn. So much nostalgia and laughs. Excellent. And they are from the Oklahoma Homicide, which I think is a true crime. It's a true crime podcast. So thank you to other podcasters, indie podcasters supporting each other.
Seriously, because I know that we've gotten a lot of inspiration from ones that we listen to.
True.
Somebody else said, fantastic podcast. I adore how in-depth these recaps are, taking it scene by scene, adding historical and medical insights along the way. It's everything I could ask for in a Dr. Quinn podcast.
So nice. Someone else wrote, I'm a huge Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman fan since it first aired in the 90s. Granted, I was about 7 or 8. Shout out to kids who grew up with Dr. Quinn.
Shout out to the kids.
Shout out to the kids who are now
kids of the
adults.
Streets. Who now don't know what they're doing.
Oh gosh. Granted, I was about 7 or 8 when I first viewed the show, but I have vivid and colorful memories of this show. I got back into it during quarantine as it helped me think about many aspects of life during a turbulent personal year, as so many of us had. Congratulations on a great podcast. Thank you.
Aww. Great podcast about my favorite show. If you are a fan of Dr. Quinn, this podcast will not disappoint.
Someone said, love it. You girls can talk up a storm.
Guess who that was, you guys?
Our mom reviewed us.
Our mom.
Thanks, Mom.
Hey, Mom. Guess where we got it from?
Oh, accurate. Talk about it. Talker. And the final one, two sisters provide a fun modern take on the 90s beloved drama Dr. Quinn. Kelly provides interesting medical details from her experience as a med student, and Sarah shares interesting historical perspectives from her love of history and research. If you love Dr. Quinn and find yourself wanting more, this is the podcast for you. Thank you.
You guys are really sweet and kind. It's been super fun for us to do this, so I'm super glad that other people have enjoyed, because, yeah, we did not imagine it would be like this.
And we have not officially announced it, though I think some people have just assumed. But when we started this podcast, we actually had no plans to do more than season 1, just because we didn't know where we would be life-wise, and also because we were like, let's just try this for season 1 and see if we can do it. And we did, and here we are. So we would like to officially confirm that we are planning to continue for a second season. And we're going to take it one season at a time. So right now we are committing to, we're going to do season 2 of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. Not a Lady podcast will return for a second season. Details to come. We don't have a huge amount of details on it yet. I know that I, having just moved abroad, am trying to figure out where to watch season 2. Some people have written in and been like, hey, if you get a VPN, Paramount Plus in Canada has Dr. Quinn. And someone also told me that in my area, in Oceania, you can get Dr. Quinn possibly on Apple TV if you have Apple products. So definitely going to be looking into that. But that's what's next for us. Like I said, more details to come. We don't have much of a plan other than that, but we will for sure let you know. So I guess this is where we start to wrap up and just say thank you 1,000 times over to everyone who's listened, who's written in,
who's had patience with us as we figure out PA school and moving across the country and figuring out life this year. You guys have been really kind and understanding, so thank you.
Yeah, let's talk about like the positivity of the Dr. Quinn fandom. Like, you guys have just been really, really encouraging to us, and that means a lot. I guess I want to thank my sister Kelly for agreeing to do this podcast with me.
Oh, don't go and get emotional on me now.
No, but really, it was the most on a whim. It might be the most on a whim thing that I've ever done, and just been like, you know what? I want to start a podcast about Dr. Quinn, and I'm going to ask Kelly to do it with me. And then you said yes.
Don't sound so shocked. I think actually, though, it is kind of not surprising, but you're very creative and have a lot of ideas for like so many things to do. And I'm like, you were really adamant about, making this happen. And so, yeah, I'm so glad we did it. And I feel like we got a lot closer because of it. Yeah. And I feel like we've spent a lot of our sisterhood like coming up and being reminded of all the ways that we're different. And I feel like this is one thing that reminded me that we're not so different. So yeah, it's been awesome. And I'm really glad we did it and we are doing it.
And it's probably like the most time, honestly, we've spent together actually since I like moved out at 18 for the most part, other than like family,
That's true,
obviously
yeah.
family holidays, but like I'm talking like just the two of us.
Period time. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
So we do have a few more people to credit because while we are the voices you hear, we are not the only contributors to this podcast. The Not a Lady podcast theme, titled This is the Wild West, was used with permissions and composed by Dominic Hauser. The blooper reel music is titled The Wheeling Saloon by the Feister Brothers. You can find more of their music on Brandon and Derek's YouTube channels. Feister is spelled F-I-E-C-H-T-E-R. Our logo art was hand-drawn in pencil by Emily Neff, and the logo design was created by Andrew Bradford. You can find more of his work on YouTube and Instagram at Africa Cameraman. My name is Sarah.
And this is Kelly.
Thank you so much for joining us for Season 1 of
Not a Lady, a Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman podcast. See you on the flip side.
Oh my gosh.
Waka, waka, waka.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please click now to give it a 5-star rating. The ratings help people discover the podcast and help us connect with more Dr. Quinn fans around the world. If you have some time, why not send the podcast to a few friends? Both of these things help us grow our audience and bring you more great episodes.
If you enjoy this podcast, you might also enjoy visiting our website, www.notaladypodcast.weebly.com. There you'll find important resources and content related to our podcast. There are also links to our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook pages where fans can connect with other Dr. Quinn fans and Not a Lady listeners.